today's webinar, Facing the Unknown, Building Resiliency During Times of Uncertainty. We're so glad you could join us today to talk about this topic. Thank you for being here. Before we begin, a little bit about Jefferson Center. We're a nonprofit, community-focused mental health care and substance use services provider, and we've been serving Jefferson County, Clear Creek County, and Gilpin County for over 60 years. We offer hope and support to individuals and families who are struggling with mental health issues and substance use disorders. Over the past few months, we've all been feeling a strain as we've adjusted and coped with various aspects of life. However, during difficult times in life, it is possible to have good mental health. I am pleased to introduce our speaker today. Angela Quinn is a licensed professional clinician here at Jefferson Center. She's been practicing for over 10 years, and she's going to talk more today about finding healthy ways to cope when you don't know what's next, knowing how to leverage your strengths, and also building resiliency to handle any situation life might throw our way. Before I hand the mic over to Angela, I do have a few housekeeping items to cover about the presentation. First, please keep your microphones muted and turn off your video during the presentation. You'll also want to change your Zoom view to speaker mode for the best viewing experience. If you have a question for Angela, please feel free to send it through the chat at the bottom of the player. We'll be answering questions at the end of the session, and if we don't get to your question during today's webinar, we'll be sure to follow up afterwards. Next, today's webinar will be available on demand after the live session, and we'll be emailing that out to you, and we'll also have the slide deck available. I would also encourage you to visit our website at jcmh.org, where we have more resources available along with blog posts related to this topic and more information about our other upcoming webinars we're hosting. And last, I'd like to encourage you to follow us on our social networks and share the recording of this webinar and other information about Jefferson Center. So without further ado, I'd like to kick things off by welcoming Angela. Angela, over to you.
Thank you so much. So today we're going to be talking about several key points, okay? One of them is combating depression during difficult times. How do you do that? As well as substance use during difficult times and how to manage it. And last but not least, how to cope with anxiety as we emerge from our houses. So let's break it all the way down by starting with discussing what depression even is. Depression is a mood disorder that causes a persistent feeling of sadness and loss of interest, also called major depressive disorder or clinical depression. It affects how you feel, think, and behave, and it can even lead to a variety of emotional and physical problems. You may have trouble doing normal day-to-day activities when you're suffering from depression. Sometimes you even feel as if life isn't worth living. More than just a bout of the blues, depression is not a weakness, and you can't simply just snap out of it. Depression may require long-term treatment, actually, but don't get discouraged because most people with depression feel better with medication, psychotherapy, or both. And we're going to talk way more about some other things that you can do to naturally work with your depression as well. But first, let's go to symptoms and talk about that. So what does depression really look like? We hear that it's sad, but what does it really look like in detail? So although depression may occur only once during your life, people typically have multiple episodes. During these episodes, symptoms occur most of the day, nearly every day, and they can include some of the following symptoms: feelings of sadness, tearfulness, emptiness, or hopelessness. Now, I want to talk specifically about the tearfulness for a moment. When I say tearfulness, most individuals who experience depression oftentimes say that they are tearful and sometimes they don't even know why. Or sometimes they're crying over something that typically would not upset them that much. So it's a little different than, watching a sad movie and then shedding a tear. It's more of maybe even crying because you woke up. or crying because something small went wrong and it feels so overwhelming to you that you just can't handle it. Another symptom is having angry outbursts, the increase in irritability and frustration, even over small matters. Once again, loss of interest or pleasure in most or all normal activities, even such as sex, hobbies, sports. We see such a significant drop in individuals' interest when they have or experiencing symptoms of depression. For example, you may have an individual who has always loved baseball, is currently on the baseball team, but all of a sudden, amongst experiencing other symptoms as well, they begin to lose interest in baseball. They want nothing to do with it. It's really difficult to even talk them into going to practice. So a very significant change in that behavior. We also see a lot of sleep disturbances, including insomnia, so not being able to fall asleep or sleeping too much. We're talking going from a normal 8 hours to sometimes 12, 15 hours of sleep a day, and oftentimes waking up and still not feeling very rested. Also, a symptom in itself is just tiredness, a lack of energy. So even small tasks take such an extra effort out of you. And it could be something as simple as a household chore that normally isn't that big of a deal, but now you're having to put every bit of effort that you have into doing that one task. Some additional symptoms are reduced appetite or weight loss, or increased cravings for food and weight gain. So that can go either way. Anxiety, agitation, or restlessness, slow thinking, speaking, or body movements. So you could, sometimes your thought process, walking into another room, not being able to remember from one room to the next what you were going in there for, not being able to comprehend very well when you're reading, all that can sort of relate back sometimes to depression. And when I say slow thinking, also slow speaking or slow body movement. And that can come a lot as well from not having that energy or maybe not getting enough sleep. Feelings of worthlessness or guilt, fixating on past failures or self-blame, trouble thinking, concentrating, like I was saying before, making decisions and remembering things, frequent or recurrent thoughts of death, suicidal thoughts, suicide attempts, or suicide. I want to talk about that for a moment because, of course, that's really important, and that's, the ultimate, the worst end of depression is if someone were to commit suicide. But I want to talk about the fact that sometimes you can get depressed and maybe you've never experienced those thoughts before. And all of a sudden, just sort of out of nowhere, along with a more depressed mood, you begin to have these thoughts. Some individuals, most individuals, don't talk about that. They feel ashamed, they feel guilty, and they don't express those thoughts to anybody because they're afraid that everybody will, sort of go into this alarm mode and sort of freak out. So they sort of keep it to themselves. That is one of the worst things you could do. I strongly encourage, if you're having thoughts or feelings that you've never had before, talk to someone about it. It doesn't even have to be a mental health professional, just someone you trust. That's a great way to get your emotions and feelings out, and it's very helpful to a lot of people. So I would suggest that. An additional symptom would be unexplained physical problems, such as back pain or headaches. We also see a lot of individuals when they're experiencing depression have a lot of stomach problems, constantly feeling like they're nauseous or like they're going to vomit, or sometimes even just stomach pain. So it is very true that our emotional and mental health is very connected to our physical health. So if you do have some of those physical problems, it doesn't always mean that you need to go to your primary care physician. Sometimes it may be mental health related. For many people with depression, symptoms usually are severe enough to cause noticeable problems in day-to-day activities, such as work, school, social activities, or relationships with others. Some people may even feel generally miserable or just unhappy without really even knowing why. It could be, I've even seen individuals where things in their life appear to be going well, but they just don't feel like it's going well. And they continue to have this sort of overall feeling of sadness and just like things are not going to get better. Now, depression symptoms are very tricky because depending on the age of the person, they can look a little bit different. For example, young children and teenagers, common signs and symptoms of depression in them are similar to adults, but there are some differences. So in a younger child, symptoms of depression may include sadness, irritability, clinginess, worry, all of a sudden having aches and pains and not knowing what it's coming from, refusing to go to school or being underweight, so they're not eating as much. But, keep in mind, some kids, of course, do overeat as well, but the most we see is usually typically undereating. And teen symptoms may include sadness, irritability, feeling negative, and worthlessness, anger, poor performance, and poor attendance at school, feeling misunderstood and extremely sensitive, using recreational drugs or alcohol. They may be eating or sleeping too much. They may be self-harming, loss of interest in normal activities, and avoidance of social interaction. Now, all that is a good explanation, but I really want to break it down even more for you for what I've seen in my experience. Most children and teenagers, the big difference in them versus adults is their depression looks more angry. A lot of times parents will tell us, well, he's just so angry. They're not really depressed or sad. They're just mad. And so then I typically say, well, if you take that time that your child is mad, and then you add it with that little bit of time that you see that they're depressed and secluded and sad, and you add that together, how much of the day is that taken up? And most people say, oh, well, that's 24 hours a day they're that way. Well, then that's how often they're depressed, and that gives us something to go by in saying that, okay, they're feeling irritable all the time and they're feeling sad all the time. So for a young adult, that would definitely be more what depression looks like. In adults in general, we tend to be more sad. We tend to cry about it. And instead of, whereas a teenager sometimes does not know maybe, or a child doesn't know exactly how to express their feelings. So instead of crying about it, they may pick up a chair and throw it. So it can look very different, but they are definitely experiencing the same things. Depression symptoms in older adults can be a little bit different too. Depression is not a normal part of growing older, and it should never be taken lightly. But unfortunately, depression often goes undiagnosed and untreated in older adults, and they may feel reluctant to seek help. Symptoms of depression may be different or less obvious in older adults. And some of those symptoms that may be less obvious are things like memory difficulties or personality changes, physical aches or pains, fatigue, loss of appetite, sleep problems, or loss of interest in sex, not caused by a medical condition or medication, often wanting to stay at home rather than going out to socialize or doing new things, suicidal thinking or feelings, especially in older men, we see this. Now, if we look back at those symptoms, if you look at it, the reason that these individuals are not diagnosed as often is because if you look at these symptoms, it just seems like, well, geez, this is probably just symptoms of getting older. You know, memory difficulties. I sort of anticipate that when I get older, my memory will be a little worse, and I'll have a little more aches and pains. I'll probably be a little more tired. But the thing is a lot of these individuals don't realize that this is not just getting older. This is the developing symptoms of depression. So I would really encourage any individuals of loved ones of older adults or older adults themselves to just really monitor your symptoms. You know, if you're feeling sad and fatigued, how many days in a week is that happening? Is it getting worse? Is it intensifying? Watch out for those types of things in older adults, because you don't want to misinterpret sort of pain and depression for just typical getting older adult stuff. So I told you we talk about how do you combat depression during difficult times like we're in right now. So being depressed can make you feel helpless, and you're not. Along with therapy and sometimes medication, there's a lot you can do on your own to fight back. I tell a lot of my clients that it's almost like going to war. You have to put on your armor. You have to change your behavior, your physical activity, your lifestyle, and even your way of thinking sometimes. Are all natural depression, and all of these are natural depression treatments. I'm going to give you some tips and natural ways to decrease your depression, such as getting into a routine. If you're depressed, you need a routine. Depression can strip away the structure from your life. One day melts into the next day. So setting a gentle daily schedule can help you get back on track. Let's listen to that again. Setting a gentle daily schedule can help you get back on track. So I'm saying gentle again because I want you to keep in mind, I'm not looking for you to push yourself into having this extravagant routine every day. Start out small, okay? So the second tip that I would give you is set goals. When you're depressed, you feel like you can't accomplish anything. So that makes you feel worse about yourself, and then to push back on that, you just want to set daily goals. So start, once again, very small. Make your goals something that you can succeed at, like simply, I'm going to do the dishes today. If you can, or even if you can't muster up the strength to do the dishes today, I'm going to do the dishes every other day. However big or small you need to start out with your goal, that's what you do. And keep in mind, there's no judgment, and you shouldn't be comparing yourself to anybody else. It's all about what is good for you. And of course, once you start to feel better, you can add more challenging daily goals. Like instead of I'm going to wash the dishes today, I'm also going to take a 15-minute walk today. Which leads me to my next tip, which is exercise. Exercise is so good for depression because it temporarily boosts feel-good chemicals called endorphins. It may also have a long-term benefit for people with depression. Regular exercise seems to encourage the brain to rewire itself in positive ways. So just walking for a few times a week can really be beneficial. Eating healthy. We're always throwing that out there, right? Eating healthy. There's no magic diet that fits depression. But it is a good idea to watch what you eat. If depression tends to make you overeat, getting in control of your eating definitely will help you to feel better. But there's nothing that's definitive. There is evidence that foods with omega-3 fatty acids, such as salmon and tuna, and also folic acids, which spinach and avocado have, could help ease depression. So that salmon, tuna, spinach, and avocado are really good to help ease depression. So keep those in mind. Number 5 is to definitely get enough sleep. Depression can make it hard to get enough sleep, and too little sleep can make depression even worse. So sometimes that can be a really bad cycle that a lot of people get into, where they're just not getting enough sleep through the night, and then they notice their symptoms are worse the next day. So really paying attention to that and making sure that you're always getting enough sleep is really important to your mental health. The number 6 tip would be take on some responsibilities. When you're depressed, you may want to just pull back from every responsibility that you have. You really want to pull back from work, from home, and even from social activities sometimes, but don't. That is the depression lying to you, telling you to do those things, but do not do those things. Instead, try to stay involved and have daily responsibilities that can help you to maintain a lifestyle that can help counter depression. They ground you and give you a sense of accomplishment. Not to mention, it's just really good to be around other people socially, which also is good for our overall well-being. Along with, if you were to, do an activity outside, being outdoors is good for our overall well-being. So just all the way around, taking on responsibilities can be really good for someone with depression. Challenge negative thoughts. Now, this is really hard during these times that we're going through right now, but it's so necessary. Sometimes that can be the hardest part. When you're depressed, you leap to the worst possible conclusions. The next time you're feeling terrible about yourself, I want you to use some logic as a natural depression treatment. You might feel like no one likes you, but is there real evidence of that? I call this fact checking. You want to fact check your thoughts. If you're feeling like you can never accomplish anything, I want you to fact check that. Have you ever accomplished anything in your past? Is there any reason to think that you're not able or capable of accomplishing anything now? For example, like if you ran a marathon in the past, is there any reason that you cannot do that now? When I say cannot, I mean cannot, absolutely not want to, but that you cannot do it. So really fact check that. Another thing that's good with fact checking is sometimes even talking with your loved ones and being honest about your thoughts and saying, sometimes I just sit and I just think, and I think that I'm just really not that smart. And right then, you'll typically hear from your loved ones, all the reasoning that they feel you are smart. And it could very well help you to sort of see things in a different light. Number 8 would be to check with your doctor before using supplements. There's promising evidence for certain supplements for depression. Those include fish oil and folic acid, like I mentioned before. But more research definitely needs to be done before we'll know for sure. So always check with your doctor before starting a new supplement, especially if you're already taking medications. Number 9 would be to do something new. When you're depressed, you're in a rut. Push yourself to do something different. Go to a museum, pick up a used book, and read it at the park. Volunteer at a soup kitchen, take a language class, anything. Just do something new. When we challenge ourselves to do something different, there's actually chemical changes that are happening in our brain. So trying something new alters the level of dopamine, which is a chemical in the brain, which is associated with pleasure, enjoyment, and learning. So in trying something new, you're actually releasing these endorphins in your brain. So that's a really cool trick to increase those endorphins sort of automatically. And last but not least, you want to try to have fun. And I keep saying try so boldly because when you're depressed, making time for things you enjoy is just not one of your priorities. Sometimes nothing actually seems fun or enjoyable to you anymore. And I want you to remember that's just a symptom of depression, though. So you have to keep trying anyway. And you have to remember, this is a symptom I'm experiencing that's making me feel like I'm not interested in anything. So as strange as it might sound, you actually have to work at having fun. Plan things you used to enjoy. Even if they feel like a chore now, keep going to the movies. Keep going out with your friends for dinner. Keep being active. When you're depressed, you can lose the knack for enjoying life. You have to relearn how to do it. In time, fun things will actually feel fun again, but you have to put in work for it to get to that point. I hope those tips are helpful to you in regards to depression. And sometimes depression can actually lead to our next topic, which is substance use. And substance use during difficult times and how to manage it. So when we talk about substances, that word alone is entailing alcohol, marijuana, non-prescription medications, cocaine, methamphetamines, heroin, and all other drugs that are not prescribed to you and that you're not supposed to be taking. All those are included when we say substance, okay? So substance use is not recommended to use in an attempt to cope with any hardship, whether it's a death or whether it's a stressful situation or whether it's just going into the unknown and being overwhelmed by that. It's never suggested to use a substance to sort of cope with that, because when you do that, then you're teaching yourself that if I have a problem, I can go to this and it'll relieve that problem. And that's when you develop an even bigger problem, such as alcoholism. So therefore, if you're having especially stressful or difficult times, it's probably best to just abstain from substances altogether. However, I do want you to keep in mind that all people who use substances are not considered to be abusing them. It is possible to use them and not abuse them. And for many people who are struggling with addiction, the toughest step forward into recovery is the very first one, which is recognizing that you do have a problem and deciding to make a change. It's normal to feel uncertain about whether you're ready to start recovery or if you have what it takes to quit. If you're addicted to a prescription drug, you may be concerned about how you're going to find an alternate way to treat a medical condition, and it's okay to feel torn. Committing to sobriety involves some changes, okay? Changing many things about your life. For example, the way you deal with stress, like I talked about a moment ago, who you allow in your life, what you do in your free time, how you think about yourself, and the prescription and over-the-counter medications you take. Now, anybody who's dealing with addiction knows that even though these sound so easy and simple, they're not. Some of these things can be some of the hardest challenges in an addict's life. One of the main ones being finding a new way to deal with stress and changing who is around you in your life. Oftentimes, individuals who are addicted to substances and abuse them have other individuals that hang around them often to do the same thing. So you're talking about having to sometimes completely change up your friend circle, and for some individuals, even changing up your family circle, and not being around some family members that maybe have some substance addictions as well, and which may encourage your addiction. So just be aware that there are some major changes you have to make, but you can do it. Many people have already done it, and you can too. So it's definitely not unachievable. It's also normal to feel conflicted about giving up your drug of choice. Even when you have it, even when you know it's causing problems in your life. Recovery really requires time, motivation, and support. But by making a commitment to change, you can overcome your addiction and regain full control of your life. I want to say again, many people have done it already, and I promise you that anyone is capable of doing it, but it really takes a really good support system and some hardcore dedication to make changes. Now, some people say, well, how many drinks? what is too much? How many drinks a day is considered an alcoholic? So according to the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism, drinking is considered to be the moderate or low risk range for women at no more than 3 drinks in any one day and no more than 7 drinks per week. So for a man, it's no more than 4 drinks a day and no more than 14 drinks per week. So if you're starting to notice that you're drinking more than that, then that's when you're sort of getting into a dangerous realm. And I even want to say like a dangerous line, because we all know there's that thin line between just using a substance recreationally and falling into full-blown alcoholism. Sometimes that line gets very blurred with some individuals because it sort of creeps up so quickly. So one sign of, that there's an issue is if you've experienced alcohol poisoning. So signs of alcohol poisoning include passing out, vomiting, being in a stupor and confusion, or experiencing gaps in memory. Temporary blackouts or memory loss is even common for those struggling with alcohol abuse. You may know or meeting people or eating or going to bed. Those memory issues is a huge telltale sign that something's not right. They are drinking too much to getting to the point of blacking out or just not being able to remember. And if you recognize any of these signs in yourself or anybody that you love and care for, I would definitely suggest that you yourself or help others to seek professional help, because I can't say it enough. It can be helped. There is treatment out there, and we can help you. So there's no need in living in that type of life. And another thing that I want to talk about is in regards to dealing with alcoholism during this time specifically. When things are highly stressful, someone who is an addict may really have a hard time dealing. So you really want to offer as much support to them outside of substances as possible, okay? So next, I want to talk about how to cope with your anxiety as we're starting to be able to emerge out of our own houses. Few of us will be the same coming out of quarantine as we're going in, okay? And we know that. People with pre-existing mental health conditions lost many of the routines that help them cope, which exacerbated their problems in the process. Many people have experienced fresh hardships throughout this COVID-19 crisis, like the loss of a job or the death of a loved one, which they likely weren't able to properly mourn over. So everybody is going through a tough time right now, and everyone has been forced to dramatically alter how they live, work, and accomplish even the most mundane tasks, such as even shopping for groceries. So there were a few psychiatrists that they got together in this article that I researched, and they asked them, well, what do you recommend? And one of the psychiatrists, which is a professor of psychological science, medicine, and health at the University of California, said that they suggest to accept that your anxieties are normal. This researcher has been conducting research on how individuals and communities respond to traumatic life events for about the past 40 years. This is unlike anything we've ever experienced in regards to COVID-19, and they highlight that it's for a variety of the following reasons. There's an invisible threat. We don't know how bad this will get, and we don't know how long this will last. And importantly, this is a global threat. So there are a few strategies that can help. None of them are perfect, and none of them are going to work for every single person. but people should moderate the amount of media they're engaging with. A steady diet of bad news is not psychologically beneficial at all. People should understand that their feelings are normal and natural, and they're not going crazy. This is a very unusual and stressful and worrisome time. So it's okay to be feeling anxious. It's normal to feel anxious during this time. But so much is out of control for every individual that it depends on your ability to test whether people have the antibodies to the coronavirus. So so one of the things that we're dependent on is the antibodies to test with the virus, as well as when is our job going to start back? Are we going to have a job? Is our job going to open back up? Am I going to be able to get groceries? Are there enough groceries in the store? I could go on and on with all of the problems that people and anxieties that people are experiencing right now. And people really need help to feel confident in the authorities and the science telling us what is risky and what is less risky. So that's another issue, not feeling trusting in other individuals to be able to tell us the truth or to know the truth. So with that, is why it's suggesting so much of not getting into the news, limiting the amount of bad news that you're listening to. Although we know that it's important to, be updated on the news so that you know anything, cures for COVID or anything in the news that's important. We need to know it, but you don't need to watch it 24/7. So practicing mindfulness and cut out unhealthy routines. An unhealthy routine would be daily or several times a day watching the news. So cut that out and practice mindfulness. There's, once again, another mental health expert, a professor at Mercy College said that we didn't have, post-traumatic stress disorder is directly related to the intensity of one's exposure to the traumatic event. The prevalence is generally reported to be 30 to 40% among direct victims, 10 to 20% among rescue workers, and 5 to 10% for the general public. So keep that in mind, that even though you may be in your home, we can experience post-traumatic stress disorder through all of this. So be very mindful and careful. After a disaster, there's also an increase in cases of major depressive disorder. We talked about that earlier. There tends to be an increase in substance use problems, which we've talked about as well. And with the Spanish flu, the death rate in the U.S. was positively correlated with the rate of suicide. When there's so much uncertainty, there are feelings of hopelessness. However, most people are resilient and they will weather this very well. If they do have mild symptoms, they will bounce back emotionally. But some people will need some form of psychological support, from self-care to professional care. So keep in mind that this is normal for everyone to experience this anxiety, and most people will bounce back. But if you feel that you are continuously having symptoms of anxiety, even though things are sort of going back to normal and you're not able to make your own body and mind go back to normal, you may need to up your self-care, as well as you may need to reach out to a professional, okay? Fighting apprehension by keeping yourself distracted is another good tip. And this tip comes from Columbia University Teachers College. This is so unique, and it's not a traumatic moment. It's chronically stressful, so we begin to fall apart physically, and the stress responses start to fail to work properly, and then you start getting depressed or anxious. So the natural reactions we have to adverse events are adaptive, but they can become uncoupled from an actual threat and become general apprehension about the world. So, in other words, we've been social distancing like we've been told, and we've been staying away from each other and trying to be precautious. But there is a line where it goes from being precautious to you're experiencing anxiety over even being around other individuals for whatever reason. And right now, that could be for many different reasons. So really trying to, let me go back here. Okay, so really trying to keep yourself distracted by doing other things. Like I said before, not watching the news 24/7, that's not a good idea. So maybe even picking up an activity that you haven't done or you haven't done in a long time, or spending time with loved ones, reading more often, and not reading specifically about COVID, but maybe reading a leisure type material. All those are good things to divert your attention away from the stressful situation that is just all around you. Another one is to get involved to help ward off feelings of powerlessness. Our behavior has changed so dramatically. Right now, there's this real sense of unreality for a lot of people. In the early days, it was like, okay, we'll shelter in place for 2 or 3 weeks, and then we'll be back to normal. That's what everybody thought. And then it became quickly clear that that was not going to be the case. Now, when we treat, and it could be stressful, especially if we reopen the economy before we have a vaccine or a treatment, which is sort of what we're doing. So keep in mind, it may be stressful, but if you can get involved to help ward off feelings of powerlessness. So one of those suggestions would be with you cannot gain power over the virus. You cannot gain power over what the government or the doctors are doing. But what you do have power over is what you do in response to what the laws are or what the rules are or what the scientists and the government is saying. So really focus on what you have power over. For example, you have power over what takes place in your own home and how you go about sanitizing your own home. You have power over if you allow other individuals to come into your home. You have power over whether or not you decide to wear a mask when you're around other individuals. So you do have power, even though it feels that so much power has been taken away from us. So really remembering that power that you have and remembering that all is not lost. Taking action can help overcome that feeling of powerlessness, and that's good for your overall mental health, period. As well as you could also have power over getting involved with politics or getting involved with news stories. If you feel that, news stories are not correct or real, maybe even, researching yourself to figure out what is correct, what is real. We are not powerless individuals, even though this entire epidemic, I think, has made everyone in the world feel a little bit of powerlessness. But just remember overall that we may be facing the unknown, but we can get through this. And I want you to think back on times when you were in situations in the past that you were facing the unknown, because we've all been in those before. I want you to think back on times when you thought, I cannot get through this, but you did anyway. All the times that you thought that there's no way this can be possible, there's no way this is going to work, there's no way we can cope with this or get used to this, but you did. And I think that just sums it all up. And whether you're dealing with depression, substance abuse, or anxiety over this pandemic, remember that you do have power and you can take control over this again. And then definitely last but not least, I want to talk about recognizing warning signs. I've talked about depression, substance abuse, and anxiety, and talked about how sometimes they can get so out of control that you need to seek professional help. Recognizing warning signs, you can continue, the way that you do that is continue to monitor new or worsening symptoms you may be experiencing with either your mental health or overall health and well-being. So keep in mind, I said that sometimes physical symptoms such as headaches, stomach aches, pains in your body, sometimes those are related to mental health. So keep track of those as well if you're noticing you're having these in conjunction with mental health symptoms. Please keep in mind that hoping mental health problems such as anxiety or depression or even substance abuse will just go away on their own, it's not going to happen. If you have concerns or if you're experiencing worsening of mental health symptoms, please ask for help when you need it and be upfront about how you're feeling. You know, a lot of time as a mental health professional, individuals will come to us and they'll say half of what's going on, but they don't say everything that's going on. We can help you so much more if we know everything. It's so important that we get a good understanding of your history as well as your present situation so that we can know what's going on with you. If you're feeling like hurting yourself or someone else, that's not something to be ashamed of. If you come to a professional and you tell them that, that is exactly what we want you to do. Not so that we can inpatient or hospitalize you, but so that we can talk through it and decipher why you're feeling that way and how we can cope with that feeling so that hopefully that feeling will eventually go away. And last but not least, please remember to check on your loved ones, your neighbors, your friends, especially if you know individuals who are under an extremely high amount of stress. And, you know, right now that's probably almost everybody that I know. But there are individuals out there who are a little more higher stress than others. So individuals that have lost their jobs recently, that have lost a loved one recently, you really want to take special care of them, and you really want to reach out to them if they live alone and make sure that they're doing okay. And that's not time limited, that's throughout. Continue to check up on them, and I think you'll find that that's really beneficial. But overall, please remember that we can do this together. We can get through this time, and even though it is a time of unknown, we've been here before in smaller situations, and we've gotten through it, and we're going to get through this one. Okay? And that's all I have for today. Do we have any questions?
Wonderful. Angela, thank you so much. That was a really informative presentation. We have gotten a couple of questions. So this first one is a little detailed, but it says, I've been pretty isolated the past 2 months, and I'm really struggling with feeling panicked about going back to work and returning to activities and going to events outside of my house. Being around other people and not knowing if they have it and are going to give it to me is definitely a situation where I feel powerless. But it also seems like it would be bad if I don't leave my house, since I'm really just doing it out of fear. How can I handle this, and what would be a good way? What would be some tips for coping?
First of all, kudos to you for being able to recognize that you're not leaving your house out of fear. I think that's the first step right there, is realizing that this is not rational anymore. It may have been at one time, but right now it's not rational for me to just stay home 24/7. The second thing that I would say is, in regards to coping with that, is gradual exposure. So taking it step by step and doing small things first. So maybe before going back to work in the full swing of things, you need to try going to the store and make that trip maybe one day, and 2 days later, set another goal. Okay, I'm going to go not just to get my essentials at the grocery store, but maybe I'm going to go to Hobby Lobby for a minute and browse around. And what you're doing is you're testing yourself in those small situations, and you're in full control of those situations, right? Because you can leave at any time. You can wear your protective equipment, which I would definitely suggest, but you are in control as to how long you stay, as to how many people you go directly around. So sort of keep reminding yourself that with some positive self-talk that you can do this, that it will be okay. And then, like I said, just continually to gradually expose yourself to more social situations. And even with work, I would suggest if you feel extremely anxious still when it's time to go back to work, maybe even speaking with your employer to see if it would be possible to start with half days and then move to full days. That may help as well.
Great, thank you. That was a really good answer. Next question is, I'm worried about my sister and how much she's been drinking recently. She's been really stressed the past few months, and every time we talk in the evening, she jokes about how many glasses of wine she's had. I know she doesn't think she has a problem, and after listening to this presentation, I don't know if she's hitting that threshold that you talked about, but I'm still really worried. Should I be concerned, and what would be a good way to approach talking about it with her?
Okay, that part about should you be concerned, I think that you already are concerned. And because you already are concerned, it sort of red flags it that this may not be a good situation, and it may be headed down a road of possible addiction. And if I felt that way about a loved one, I would most certainly bring it to their attention. I think the key is how you bring it to their attention. If you come at someone in a very accusatory manner and you're sort of, pointing the finger at what they're doing wrong, they're less likely to listen to you. But I think that if you come at them from a place of love and kindness and respect and say, hey, listen, I've sort of been sitting back and realized that you're drinking a little more than normal, and it's really starting to concern me because, I know these facts about alcoholism, and I'm really afraid that you might be headed down that road. Can we talk about it? Can you, or if you won't talk to me, will you talk to a professional about it? Really just trying to get them to open up about what is it that's driving them to drink. And is there any way that you could be helpful and supportive of helping them to find other ways to cope with what they're dealing with other than drinking? Because that's a big reason why a lot of people drink, is just not, the coping is too overwhelming. So it may be the things that are going on with COVID-19, but it could also be some things going on with her that you're just not aware of. So really bringing up that conversation of what's really going on. And I love you. I don't want to see you become addicted. So tell me what I need to do to help you. And I think that if you come in that supportive way, she's going to be way more likely to listen. And even if she doesn't listen now, at least she knows that you are there in a supportive manner, not in an authoritarian type manner.
Great, thank you. And then we have one final question. And it says, my company recently laid me off, and whenever I read the news, I get really stressed because they keep talking about how there's not a lot of jobs. How can I stop worrying about the future and when I'm going to get a new job and that everything is going to be okay?
Did you say that they're watching the news?
Yeah, they're watching the news and seeing
Okay.
that the job market
Okay,
is bad, and yep.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I thought that was what you said. stop doing that part, first of all, because what the news is saying about different employment all over the United States is not directly it's not going to help you find a job. So it's sort of pointless to just sit there and torture yourself with listening to all that. It's not very beneficial. If you want to listen to something, I would suggest that you go on YouTube and listen to empowerment talks, or listen to talks of people who, lost their job and then they came out on top. Something to encourage you and motivate you, as well as that will help you to do is what I was going to say next is remember what you have power over. And if you do that, if you surround yourself with positivity and with just listening to things of individuals overcoming adversity, I think that's just going to really skyrocket your motivation to control what you can. As long as you're job searching and using all of your resources to find a job, then you're doing all that you can do. And continuing to focus on the fact that you lost your job or focus on what's happening all over the country, that's not really going to benefit you. So I would really, really suggest amping up your self-care. And one of the main things I would say is positive self-talk. Really talking to yourself in a good way, really being realistic, and remembering that you did not lose your job because of anything you did, but because of just the circumstances of the entire world right now. So remembering you are fully capable of finding another job. You can and you will. It's just a matter of time. So really get your head out of anything negative. And that's really important right now because you're in a tight situation. And I know that it is important for you to find a job, and it is important for us to be able to feed our families. But if we don't focus on the positive, we will get completely sucked up in the negative. It will take over, and then you'll sort of be good for nothing. So really focus on the positive. And I really suggest getting on YouTube and looking up just motivational speeches.
That's a great idea. It seems like really focusing on the positive can help not just in that situation, but a lot of situations right now. So that's some great advice.
Certainly.
Yeah. So I think that's all the questions we have. Angela, thank you for joining us today. And also just another thank you to everyone who's participated in our webinar. One more thing, just know that in the good times and the bad, Jefferson Center is here with you every step of the way. You can visit our website at jcmh.org or follow us on Facebook for more resources and information. And you can also reach us by calling us at 303-425-0300. Thank you all for coming today and have a great day.